welcome back, disciples. The war wages on, and us, much like Goblin Slayer, know who the real threat is. Not these automatons, but the Terminids. We need to talk over these a little bit, alright? So you can have an idea of what's the best ways to deal with these things. Mainly, if you can destroy any patrol or any POI area without aggroing the tinier mobs and letting them flare a signal, it'll save you a lot of trouble. But you'll also see packs of these medium-ish sized bugs that can also call in fellow Terminids for the most
Helldiver,
part.
take command of the galaxy's
Groups of
liberation.
small bugs, much like the tutorial, you can kill with grenades and thin them out rapidly and have a better chance of stopping the one that's going to make the signal call. Much like that, acid spitters and the little bile spitters, they're also vulnerable to grenades. So one well-placed grenade can explode and have them deal damage around them. But something to consider with the Terminids is that every Terminid is also a danger to other Terminids around it. So, bile spitters and acid spitters, when they explode, damage those around them. If you have a group of them, like say 2 to 4, and you throw a grenade underneath a Bile Titan, they will detonate and potentially kill the Bile Titan. Likewise, your Bile Titan's melee attacks can also kill other smaller creatures under it. And the Bile Titan's acid can also kill
Ready for another mission, Helldiver?
other things around it. Sometimes, even though you don't really want to push the limits of democracy, you can become a traitor and trigger an all-out barrage on your character and lead that into the Tyranid swarm to help turn the tides of a fight for your allies. Missile launcher shots on charger legs can then be followed up with primary weapon damage on their legs to kill them. Missile shots to a Titan's face will end up killing it in 2 shots. Charger's face, 1 shot. You can hit a Bio Titan in the chest when it tries to spit acid to destroy its acid sac, and then it will be forced to use melee attacks instead. Likewise, if you have a machine gun, such as the manned machine gun turret or the heavy machine gun, you can potentially run underneath the Bio Titan.
The hour of our next victory rapidly approaches. Let us cleanse the galaxy of alien scum.
And destroy its underbelly and potentially kill it. You can do this just by simply shooting the bottom of it when it tries to spit acid, and then slowly work your way up to its head underneath its body with your machine gun, or just try to use all of your damage on the back end of it as best you can, but the man turret will have problems with this. The 500 kg bomb can destroy the Bio Titans, chargers, and also large groups of enemies, making it very effective for killing the Terminids, as well as the 380 barrage, which is able to kill massive amounts of Terminids around your player forces. However, it can be somewhat randomized, so you want to probably have at least 2 people using this at the same time in order to rapidly dispatch massive amounts of Terminids and reset the battlefield. A recoilless rifle is probably the best missile launcher in order to rapidly take out chargers and titans at the same time. Quasar
Helldiver,
cannons and
the
stuff
Super
can also be
Destroyer is ready
effective,
for your
but they don't
next
have a
mission.
high enough fire rate to be effective in a long-term fight. However, if you want to use a Quasar cannon or etc. in your group, you only need 1 person to use a Quasar cannon, as they stay on the battlefield when they die or respawn more of them. So there shouldn't be any real need for you to have 4 players with 4 Quasar cannons or 4 players with 4 shield generators or anything like that. Speaking of which, the shield generator is not really that useful against the Tyranids. Everyone runs it because they're afraid of acid. If you're going to get shot with acid, you need to dive sideways. Diving sideways will dodge pretty much all acid and effects. If you get hit with this slow, you still just need to dive some more. For the most part, this will be fine, but medical items and stems are much better, as well as the supply pack, which will be able to fill up your grenades and ammo, which helps you with Tyranids' numbers and also their massive amounts of bug supplies. As things get harder, you're going to need more and more grenades and other items to destroy more Tyranid bug holes inside of their hives, which is kind of a big deal.
Helldiver, the Super Destroyer is ready for your next mission.
Machine gun emplacements, among other things, can be effective, such as manned turrets with the singular solo player. However, if you're using sentry turrets, this can also require a team. You can be somewhat effective with one sentry turret user, but it's not as good as multiple sentry turret users. So, for instance, the Tesla Tower can put a lot of work in and kill many bugs depending on where you place it, but only having one Tesla Tower isn't really that optimal, and it isn't going to be able to hold thousands of Tyranids back as well as chargers. However, if you have two people with Tesla Towers, you're going to be able to hold back a good amount of waves coming in. The best case when you're a solo turret user is to use your turrets to kill patrols coming in from behind. As with the Tyranids, it's a little bit more difficult to stop bug breaches, but if you're going to attack a patrol and not be able to destroy it with a straight air attack, which still doesn't always work, turrets can kill the patrols before they signal because they won't signal if you're not near them. So that's probably the biggest benefit of having turrets away from your party and in the line of patrol routes that will be coming your direction, as they'll buy you time, kill the enemy patrols, and stop extra swarms from spawning. If you're going to have turrets such as the MG turret or the Gatling turret, they can be effective in small doses instead of a stratagem as a solo player. But if you're stacking up on them, they're better if you have at least two people running those turrets. Namely, the the auto cannon is better when you have two people, and then the Gatling guns are better when you have two or four people, and then the MGs are decent when you have four people. There's a number of things like this. You also have the auto uh, guard dog, the one that shoots bullets, which can be effective against the Tyranids, as well as the laser, but the auto one does more damage. You still wouldn't need all those backpacks for all your teammates. You would need at least one player with the backpack or two players with the backpack, and then you just supply them to your allies. And they can also shoot while you're on a man turret or with your sentry turrets, just to give you more firepower. Flamethrowers are probably one of the best things to use with the Tyranids, but to get the full effect right now, you need to be the party leader. Flamethrower with EMS can actually freeze targets and allow you to burn them. Corrosive gas is somewhat effective, but not really. However, if they're frozen in place, you might be able to get more damage off. Flamethrowers, however, are very dangerous for the rest of your team, but can kill a lot of trash mobs on the bottom of the ground. Flamethrower is equivalent, in my mind, to the manned turret, pretty much in the effectiveness of it, but it is a little bit more dangerous as well, but less, how to say, situational than a man turret. Man turrets can be used pretty much anywhere, don't get me wrong, but they lack the ability to really deal with groups that swarm their location because they'll end up destroying the turret. As long as airstrikes from your allies being panically thrown and destroying your turret, flamethrower doesn't really have that much issue with any of that, and so it's probably a better option against the Tyranids, but the man turret can be stacked at multiple locations around the map and used by multiple teammates, as well as destroy many enemies on the battlefield. The walking barrage is also something that's with the 380 barrage, where it's decent when you have one person using it, but probably better when you have multiple people using it. In random groups, you can't really get people to try out random builds they don't want to run, which is going to end up affecting the playstyle that you're forced to do when you're playing with randoms, such as my beginner and medium tier build. It works for low levels and it works for me in Hell Dive difficulty because it allows me to have access to pretty much every tool that I need to do a mission by myself. utilizing a little bit of stealth and other options, as well as picking up excess gear from my dead allies, since most of them run the same things and they die a lot. If you have a team, however, there's a number of stratagems that you can use in unison that become very good, like the Tesla towers or the sentry turrets. Orbital barrages and stuff can take the place of lasers. You can share items between you, so for instance, in my new player build, you use the expendable rocket launcher as well as the supply pack. However, if you have another ally that is willing to take a recoilless rifle, you could probably just swap out and have the supply backpack with no expendables, and then just use his missile launchers as long as he doesn't die. And then later on, when he summons another one, you could swap and take up the second one, or he could take up a second supply backpack from you. However, it's still probably good to have the expendables. So in case, you could have a recoilless rifle with a supply backpack and expendables with the supply backpack, giving you twice as many rocket launchers to shoot from the recoilless rifle, or both of you could take the recoilless rifle and 2 supply backpacks, which lets you alternate between each other when you want to fill up ammo or not, and call in additional ammunition or be able to use them simultaneously. There's a number of reasons to do this. Airburst strikes and some other things can be good against the Tyranids, but as a solo player, they probably won't have enough impact, such as the cluster bomb, which is able to kill out massive hordes of low-level enemies. But if you can't keep cycling them, then you're not going to be able to kill them off fast enough, as well as deal with other threats. If you're not running a bunch of other stratagems and you prefer airstrikes, the cluster bomb is very good to keep clearing out enemies, as well as the Gatling barrages. But against randoms, it can be kind of difficult to make it work properly, as if you don't have access to the bug hole or able to group up the enemies, then you're probably not going to get the best effect out of it. So there's a number of options there that's hard to do. EMS strikes as well can potentially freeze all the Tyranids, but
The
you're going to
siege
need
upon
multiple
managed
people
democracy
willing to use
continues.
the EMS
Let
strikes,
us rally to
as
her
well as the
defense.
EMS mortars, which are probably one of the better options against the Tyranids if you want to freeze them in place. So if you're going to use flamethrowers, etc., you could use EMS mortars and EMS strikes to pin them down and keep them off of you. As well as if you're going to use sentry turrets, you can use EMS mortars and EMS strikes to pin down Tyranid forces from getting to your turret backline. But Tesla's towers can also provide more damage and kill more enemies without the ammunition problems. So there's kind of a number of things like this. Autocannons don't really do a whole lot against the Tyranids, but you can use them. The spear is also very good, but probably requires multiple people to use it effectively. Orbital lasers can also be very decent, but you need to take out Bile Titans instead first before using this, which is kind of counterintuitive. There's a number of things that you need to deal with Titans and Bio Titans and Chargers beforehand. So there's really 2 main jobs that you need to do when you come to face the Tyranids. Maybe 3. But one is killing out low-level fodder, which can be done fairly easily, which is why people run airstrikes like the Eagle airstrike. As you have 4 people at the Eagle airstrike, you can continuously call in barrages to kill off the fodder. People use it instead of the cluster because it can deal with higher level enemies and deal more damage to chargers and or biotitans, but both of them are very effective if you have enough of them to lay down, and you can easily kill many hordes with this stuff. However, if 4 people are running the cluster bomb or the eagle strikes, then you still need people that are able to deal with chargers and biotitans. And if everybody's running the quasar cannon and they're not dead aim shots or able to, team up and kill one target at a time, they'll end up getting overrun because the quasar cannon doesn't have enough suppressive firepower. All of your allies are going to be focusing on killing the big threats and get overwhelmed by the small threats, which makes it to where they can't shoot as often and they get overrun. So some builds, if you're able to kill a bunch of small items, like say you wanted to run all of the sentry turrets with Gatlings and machine guns and all of that auto cannons, you can actually run that in a build if you have a solid team that can cover up your weaknesses, because you're going to have this cooldown of 180 seconds on all of your turrets. Even though you can deal with all the fodder, you're not going to be able to deal with the Bio Titans. Conversely, if people bring a bunch of precisions and airstrikes, etc., they can be very effective, but they also have cooldowns, which means that if you don't have enough of them, you're not going to have enough firepower to deal with the Tyranids. So any effective item that you use, such as like the shield generator, that isn't able to deal effective damage and suppress the Tyranid swarms, will eventually lead to you getting overran. Things like the jump pack you can use to jump on the back of chargers and Bio Titans or get out of the way, which can be very effective for kiting around enemies and securing your extracts, or being able to explore and pick up extra samples without worry of death. Smokes and things like that don't really have any effect on the Tyranids, but there are some items on the ground that when you step on will cause clouds to form, some sort of pollen or some sense, and it does seem to cover up your tracks. The EMSs still do very good work at stopping chargers and other things if you really use them correctly, but can be somewhat difficult. And then this gas strike can have some effectiveness, but it's, a little hard to say. Shield generated relays aren't really super effective with the Tyranids. They don't do a whole lot for you, but they can protect you versus a bomb strike, potentially. It's kind of hard to say. HMG turret placement is pretty much one of the better options for the end game, in my case. Anti-personnel mines and incendiary mines can work very good against the Tyranids, but they're not going to stop them from getting in necessarily. They'll kill some of the fodder, but they'll kind of get overran as well. If you have multiple people using this, then you can actually put down a pretty solid defense. You could use this with sentry turrets and stuff if you want, or the man turret, and it works very well. Teammates, however, don't like landmines because they can't really see um, red blinking lights on the ground, or sometimes they sink into the ground and you can have some issues. But altogether, these defensive placements can put in a lot of work when you're playing. Guard Dog Rovers, the laser one, doesn't really do a bunch of damage to anything besides these small fries, but it's still somewhat useful. However, it kills your teammates a lot, which is kind of annoying. The ballistic one, however, does a lot better job at killing things and also not killing your teammates, but needs ammunition consistently, which kind of rails it into an area. Rail cannon is still pretty effective, but it's not really the best versus the Chargers and or the Bio Titans, so it's kind of iffy to say at the least. You can use stealth when you fight the Tyranids just by crouching or hiding, and you can stay away from them for some period of time, but they seem to always kind of know where you are anyway. And if you're making noise by causing strikes to drop or etc., they will investigate, and then they'll kind of stick around and slowly have more and more swarms follow you. But you can't sneak around or past a number of Tyranid patrols and stuff without them seeing you. Even if it looks like they saw you, you could still usually crawl away and then they'll just act like they didn't see you. This is probably because they don't have eyes and they're actually sensing you from something else, but I'm not really sure. This is kind of when you lay on the ground, when you come in and you drop for the first time, you can lay on the ground so you don't trigger anything when you first land. Or you can kill everything as soon as you land without them getting off a signal. And in that case, you can both win on all those. The arc thrower I also think is potentially useful against the Tyranids as well as the Tesla Tower, but you're still going to need multiple people to make this extremely effective. If you're wearing the arc armor with this arc thrower and also having the arc Tesla Tower, you can hold off lots of waves of enemies in the Tyranids with only using, you know, let's say they have two people with arc throwers and then four people with the Tesla towers. The Tesla towers can put up pretty much an amazing fight and kill all the small stuff, while the arc thrower is going to be able to help you with the small and the bigger things. And then your two other players can drop two more arc throwers to your other two players and also conserve two utility slots with their stratagems, which could free up things like supply backpacks or rocket launchers, which you'll need for the enemies. In general, when it comes to this, I would say that your rocket launcher players are probably the ones that need uh, maybe the 500 kilogram bombs to be able to destroy structures as well as kind of deal with bigger threats that they're kind of focused on. While as your other players can have more utilities like turrets and/or um, orbital barrages, things like that, to deal with bigger groups of enemies, or cluster strikes to deal with smaller groups of enemies that they might get overwhelmed with. There's a number of potential play styles, but you have stealth play style, which you're gonna need a pretty experienced team to do a bunch of stealth stuff. You have bomb playstyle where you just call in a bunch of bomb strikes 24/7, which can work with all of them. You got just straight bullets and rocket launchers, which you can do, which is pretty interesting to use. You also have this defensive emplacement kind of strategy you can use using the manned turrets, minefields, and expendable rocket launchers, where you can expand from your extract spot to the points of interest on the map, and then work back through your fortified areas to the extract so you don't have to worry about bugs coming in from behind. However, there's also a number of things that came out with how the spawns work on the map, such as like not doing the objectives immediately if you want to keep the spawn rate down. And then there's also a stratagem, or not stratagem, but there's a power up that you can get that reduces the frequency of the events as well, which is kind of a bonus and something to look into when you get enough, war bond stuff for it. But apparently, killing primary and secondary objectives can decrease the timer that allows things to spawn. Staying in one group decreases the amounts of spawns that can happen. Splitting up into multiple groups will increase the spawns that can happen. Splitting up into multiple groups, but being in enough area to be close to the original group, will stop things from spawning and also having more spawns, as well as spreading you out to where you can be more stealthy. And then hugging the edges of the map when there isn't any bug hives will stop spawns from coming on the map. However, if you're hugging the map, there's still bug hives, you're going to have hordes of enemies coming from the bug hives, which kind of tells you the direction, as well as letting you know where the patrols are going to come from, which allows you to set up ambushes behind you or in front of you when you're playing, which then saves you more time from dealing with big hordes if you can deal with the ambush. So, for an example, if you spawn on the south side of the map and you stick to the border, and then you rotate around the left side of the circle and you clear out the bug hives on that side of the map, then you know that there's going to be patrols coming from the other directions. And then you can figure out where the other hive is just from seeing where the patrols are. But you can also put turrets or landmines, etc., behind you at these locations to kill the patrols before they get to you. And then, if you kill off all of the tinier bugs and the patrols before they get to you, they're not going to be able to summon a horde because they're dead, which ends up saving you a lot of time. So a lot of players, even the more advanced players that fight the Tyranids, they tend to aggro too many Tyranids and not be able to clear them out fast enough because their gear just doesn't have the DPS for it. And then they get overwhelmed and need to run around for a long period of time and waste time. This makes things kind of like the orbital laser, for an example, which is still a good stratagem to have, not as effective because they're endlessly spawning hordes and running around and not getting anything done. And then they waste this stratagem on things like chargers and biotitans instead of killing them off immediately, which ends up making this to where it's less effective. If you're bum rushing hive objectives, etc., and you're able to take out all the big chargers and biotitans as a team, then one of these orbital lasers can easily shred all the other Tyranids and save you a lot of time and effort and help you get the things done. But if you're not, this is just kind of buffering up your loss. Any case, there's a lot of options that you can use when you play against the Tyranids. Just make sure that, if you have a good team, they're going to probably be able to do quite a lot of these tactics. But if you're a solo player, people aren't going to take too kindly to it probably. And you're not going to be able to deal with all the situations that you're going to deal with. So if you go full, gunner with bullets, you're not going to be able to deal with chargers and titans, which is the main bulk of the enemy threat for the most part. Any case, y'all guys have a good one. I'm gonna head to bed, and then we'll fight for democracy in our dreams. Have a great night, man.